So, BMW have got themselves a new hero M car. With its two-door layout, its sleek coupe styling, its finely tuned engine and some very clever suspension, it delivers a superb drive, apparently, and it is everything the old M3 used to be. Except it's called the M4. So, what does that mean for this car? This is an M3. It has the same motor and the same suspension and the same clever electronics as the M4, but it also has 2 extra doors, which is why it's been separated from the coupe version and has a different name. BMW have decided that when it comes to the 3 Series, people should perceive it differently. According to them, the 3 Series is less dynamic, it has less presence and a more retiring personality, which kind of goes against everything that M cars are about, because they're about power and being an extrovert and showing off the best that BMW can do. The good news is that whatever the BMW board decided the 3 Series should be, no one told M Division. Because this car is not less dynamic or more retiring. From the moment you get going, you can feel it bristling with a kind of performance potential that makes you want to bunk work and find your nearest favourite driving road. We've come all the way to Clarence to see what this thing is made of, and so far all I can think is, it reminds me of a Land Rover Defender. There is a saying that goes, the Land Rover Defender isn't the best vehicle until you get it into its natural environment. And what that means is that your 2-hour drive to your adventure destination might be quite terrible until you hit the dirt and you see what it's capable of and you can appreciate it in that environment. And I kind of feel the same about this car. Not because the drive out of town was terrible, because it wasn't. This is still a BMW, so the cabin is a comfortable, well-spec'd place with the kinds of things that make a long journey easy. Sat-nav, comfortable seats, adaptive cruise control. Plus, there are 4 doors, so your mates can get in and out quite easily when you stop for bathroom breaks. What made the long drive so hard was a very obvious trait this car has. This thing just wants to attack every piece of road it comes across. It reminds me of the older M cars, not like the new M5 that's a bit soft and wallowy until you poke it with a stick. This is more like the old Z4 M Coupe that just wants to fight. Even in its softer suspension setting, this thing couldn't care less about giving you a comfortable drive to the office. The 3-litre twin-turbo spits out 317 very angry kilowatts and 550 equally belligerent newton-meters. As good as the engineering is in the new M3, BMW didn't just leave it up to a bunch of eggheads to create this car. They got some guys who know a thing or two about driving. Remember that F1 driver Timo Glock? Well, he's in DTM now, and he's got a teammate called Bruno Spengler. And BMW phoned them up and asked them if they'd like to help develop the M3 while lapping the Nürburgring. And their input, together with all that engineering I was talking about, has helped tune this car into something magnificent. And thankfully, you don't have to be a racing driver to appreciate it. It just feels so alive. From the steering feel to every corner of the car, its responses to your inputs tell you exactly what's going on. Those interactions are helped by an incisive 7-speed dual-clutch gearbox, and the sensation of speed and power is amplified by the crack of every gear change. The downside is that to truly feel what it can do, you need to give it space to run. Even if you are intent on keeping it chained up, it still won't keep you out of trouble. There's so much power and ability coursing through this car's veins that it takes very little effort to get up to some seriously illegal speeds. Besides, you can't drive for too long without wanting to mash your right foot through the firewall. And depending on how brave you are, you can select varying degrees of nanny in varying combinations, basically from full electronic control to complete driver control and everything in between. Although I'd suggest, unless you've had a few lessons from the aforementioned Herr Glock and Herr Spengler, you leave some electronics switched in. This is not a car in which to pretend you know how to drive. I don't care what BMW says about the 3 Series being less exciting than the 4. When something is bolted together like this, there's not a bad word to be said about it. And now it's time for a confession. I've been doing this job for a while now, but I've never understood the hype behind the BMW M3. Sure, it's always been mechanically very good, but I've always seen it as something a little bit soulless. But this version has changed all of that. It's so good because it goes so far beyond just being the sum of its parts to becoming a living, breathing performance machine. And it is very special. Another superb engine from BMW powers the M3, with every kilowatt and newton meter just waiting to push this car to its limit. The soundtrack is equally brilliant. It's an incredible machine once you have the space and the nerve to see what it can really do. But it's not a car in which to test your skills. You need to be a capable driver in order to push it.